Damn. Go.
Alright guys, how's it going? So it's EastBayAnglers, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different than we normally do. We're going to be breaking down lakes for you guys. We're going to be doing a couple videos on a few lakes just to see how it goes and break them down. We're going to start with Lake Chabot, and we're going to talk about trout fishing, exclusively trout fishing and exclusively bank fishing for trout at Lake Chabot, and some of the places, the top 5 spots that myself and the people that I've met that are in that area that I've caught big trout in a consistent basis at that lake. So we're going to talk about key spots, we're going to talk about key locations, we're going to talk about angles. Alright guys, this information applies year after year. This is something these are consistent, proven fish catching spots. They're consistent year in and out. So the tips we're about to talk about are going to help you guys catch trout bank fishing at Lake Chabot. Let's get started. Alright guys, so we're going to start off talking about location number 1, which is Indian Cove, located on the east side of Lake Chabot, on the east trails of Lake Chabot. And you're going to go down some stairs, which is the preferred method. You're going to see a little marker. It's going to say Indian Cove. Go down. Now right off the bat, those stairs are a killer spot. If you cast straight out, short, medium, or long casts, now there's also 3 benches. The second and the third bench can also be very productive. That spot is extremely popular. It's extremely close, considering a lot of the other good spots to fish are 2 to 3 times the walk. So if you're carrying a lot of gear, Indian Cove is close and it's a decent fishing spot. It's actually one of the best fishing spots in my opinion. But one of the things we want to talk about is Indian Cove is a shallow spot, and it's also one of the first spots that the fish will show up at as soon as they plant. So if they planted on Monday, by Tuesday morning they're at Indian Cove. Whether they're biting or not is a different story. So about 3 days after that initial plant, you should be fishing Indian Cove. Some people like to fish the burner, but Indian Cove outproduces the burner all day, every day. So that's something to keep in mind. That's something to consider. As far as the depth, Indian Cove is extremely shallow, so consider that when you're out there fishing and you're using leaders and you're changing those leader lengths up. Remember, it's not that deep in Indian Cove. You're also going to have to deal with an abundance of fishing pressure. So that pressure comes early. You're going to have a lot of people there, and like I said, it's one of those close, convenient spots. So you're going to have a lot of people there, and you're going to have to get there real early. It's going to be a little hard sometimes. You're going to have those days where you get up, you get there 5 a.m., you're at the permit booth up the front gate, getting your permit, and you get there as fast as you can, and there's people already there, and sometimes it just feels like you can't get there early enough. So getting to a spot is key. Once you guys figure out the exact spots that catch fish constantly, produce fish, like I said, straight down from the stairs, second and third bench for Indian Cove. Once you guys really get that down and you spend a lot of your time fishing directly in front of those those three things, you guys are going to catch more fish. Alright guys, so that about sums up Indian Cove. Location number 2. It's near Catfish Landing. It's to the right of it, and there's a point sticks out. It's a drop off. It's a steep drop off. It's a little bit of a steep grade there, so you guys have to be a little careful when going down, making sure not to fall and get hurt. But it can produce some really good trout fish in about 5 to 6 days after they plant those trout in. I mean, they're in that area. They've moved on past the Indian Cove area, and they've moved on a little bit further, and it seems like that spot really starts to turn on. So really consider that. One of the things that I really like about this spot is it gets a lot less pressure. There's not as many people. You don't have rod to rod. You don't have person to person. You're not dealing with lots of other people. So that's one of those spots you can go to, get away from all the crowds, just go fishing, have some time to yourself, and catch some trout. That's a good spot. Move on to location number 3, which is Raccoon Point. And specifically, when I talk about Raccoon Point, I refer to the left side of the point. If you cast straight ahead of the point, you're going to catch a few fish here and there, but I've not seen or personally experienced too much. To the right, it's very rare as well that those fish will be to the right of Raccoon Point. And I know a lot of people hear a lot of good things about Raccoon Point. They hear about a lot of big fish, big trout getting caught at Raccoon Point. And when they're catching them 99.9% of the time to the left side of that point. So when you go to Raccoon Point, you've got to get it on that left side. There's going to be a lot of people there, especially when the bite is hot. There's going to be a lot of competition. There's going to be a lot of rods in the water. It's going to be sometimes, a foot or 2, 3 feet between rods, and you're going to have to get there early. Just like Indian Cove, it's also very popular. I will say it's a bit of a walk. Raccoon Point is almost 2 miles from the front of the lake, so if you're carrying a lot of gear, if you've got weight, if you've got one of those baskets or carts that you carry your gear in, that's something to consider. Maybe if you have a bicycle, something you can get there a little quicker. A lot of times people will use a bicycle to get to Raccoon Point because it's a bit further. So Raccoon Point is one of those spots that in my experience, December 1st, 2nd, 3rd week of December, 4th week of December, that place is on fire. But especially the first 2 weeks of December, it's almost guaranteed people are catching big trout, 5, 6, 7s, 8s, even 9s. So I've caught 3 9s out of the left side of Raccoon Point. I've caught a multiple number of 6s and 7s and 8s and 5s and 4s and 3s. So there's a lot of fish, a lot of big fish to be caught at Lake Chabot, but Lake Chabot is a tough lake. Raccoon Point's definitely a place you should put in a lot of your time. That left side is key, and there's going to be 2, 3 locations on that left side, and they're going to always produce. It's going to be the same thing every day. One person's going to pick one spot and it's going to hit. The next day that spot might not hit, but the other spot will. There's 3 spots specifically on the left side of that point that all produce extremely well. And you don't know every day which one's going to produce. I prefer the middle area, that left point right there in that middle section. There's like a bush, a shrub. You just fish directly in front of that. That's one of my favorite spots. I've caught a lot of big fish fishing right in front of that shrub, that little tree. So that's basically summing up Raccoon Point. Alright guys, so we're going to be talking about spot location number 4. It's Coots Landing, and it's on the west side of Lake Chabot. We've been talking about a lot of the spots on the east side of Lake Chabot, the east shoreline, the east trails. We're going to be talking about the west shoreline right now, and the west shoreline has Coots Landing, and that's an excellent trout fishing spot. And to the right of the Coots Landing dock, if you guys walk about 100 feet or so, there's a stretch right there that the fishing can be really great. Caught a lot of big fish there. Know a lot of people that have caught a lot of big fish there. That's a great spot. Um, Definitely worth giving a try, because I know when you go, sometimes you go to Lake Chabot and you spend a whole day and you get no bites, and it's just that day they weren't biting. But there are times when I've been a bit stubborn myself and I won't move to a different spot, and I regret it later on. And my buddies told me, hey, the bite is on the west trail and you always fish the east trail, or the bite's on the east trail and you're always fishing the west trail right now. So focusing on one spot too much really is a disadvantage in the end. So finding those fish, locating them, and it's key. So that spot's really good. Give that one a try as well. And we're going to go ahead and talk about what makes that spot so good. Well, one of the things that makes that spot so good is to the right of the dock and to the right of the spot that I'm referring to is the area in which they plant. With the planting trucks, they have two locations that they plant at Lake Chabot, and one's at the front of the lake and one's north on the west side of the Lake Chabot Trail, and they plant on that side as well. And those fish will usually move to the left and go towards Alder Point, and on their way, a lot of them pass right by Coots Landing. So that's really good. If you go right after the plant, they're right there. You can do really good just throwing cast masters at them and catching them right there. On to spot location number 5, and that's at the back of Lake Chabot. It's on the north side. It's technically, I believe, Oakland and no longer Castro Valley. So Bass Cove is a great trout fishing spot. There's a lot of fish caught there. There's a lot of big fish caught there as far as trout go. The one thing to keep in mind is it's really weedy, and they've thrown a lot of Christmas trees in there and a lot of other things to create habitat for the bass. So it's really important to remember when you go there that you're going to snag up much more than you would anywhere else in Lake Chabot. It's absolutely a snag fest, and you're going to be losing setups left and right, but you will be catching fish, and you will be able to find a few spots here and there where you're able to cast and not snag up every time. One of those spots would be if you go down to Bass Cove, you're going to encounter a tree. It's a lone tree, and if you fish to the left of that tree, or to the right, or even straight ahead of that tree, but if you just stay around that tree, that's a very good spot. And if you don't hit there, there's a little cove to the left, and you can access that right there. Just go about 100 feet to the left, and that can produce from time to time when the water's up high enough. So I hope that this really helps, guys. That's going to be later in the year when Bass Cove turns on. It's not going to be as early as all these other spots we're talking about. Alright guys, so just remember, this is key. Bass Cove does not turn on as early as the rest of the lake. It's deeper water, it's colder water, so it's not going to turn on as early as places in like Raccoon Point and Indian Cove and Coots Landing. Alright guys, and the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to spot location number 5 is it's extremely far from the access and the front of the lake. So there's only one other way to get there other than walking around or bike riding around 7 miles to that location through some pretty rough terrain. So the only way to get around that is to drive to the Oakland Golf Course, park at the top level of the golf course that's paved for the parking lot, and there will be a hole in the fence if you walk across the golf field that they have. I'm not sure exactly which holes they are, but they're the only ones on the top level, and you walk across and you'll see a fence, and through there will be an opening through that fence if you walk along it. When you go down, there's going to be quite a grade. They actually call it Cardiac Hill. It's got quite the grade down, and it's quite the hike up. And you go down there, and it's pretty peaceful. There's not much pressure. Like I said, it's a good walk down too. It's not only steep, but it's a good walk down. Not exactly sure, but maybe a mile, mile and a half, no mile, maybe a mile. But it's also got a curfew, so you know if you don't have your vehicle out of there by sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8, depending on when that golf course closes its facility, you can't have your vehicle locked in there. You can have your vehicle towed and tagged if it's in there after hours. So that's something to also keep in mind. Beware that if you go to the golf course in Oakland and you park there and access through that fence, Cardiac Hill, to get to Bass Cove and follow that trail, and it'll take you there, and take a right when you hit down the trail, then you're going to have to be out of there most of the time by 5-ish or 6-ish to guarantee that you're not going to get locked out, or your vehicle locked in, or towed or tagged, or in trouble in any way. So I really hope this helps, guys. These are just the five best fishing spots, trout fishing spots, that I personally have experienced. I've caught a lot of fish. I know people, a lot of people, that have caught a lot of fish in these locations. And for me, this is where most of the local experienced anglers with Lake Chabot are going to spend their time when they're trout fishing. You might hear a little bit about the Burner or Alder Point, but they produce very inconsistently, and they're no longer really the spots that they were. Across from Raccoon Point, there's some toolies, and that can also be a decent or fair fishing spot at times to catch trout. But that's also a very long hike or bike ride, and that's also another thing that you kind of have to weigh out, and kind of weigh your options and figure out what you want to do. Alright guys, so thanks for watching the video. I hope you guys learned something.